Now, when it comes to axing the tax, I don't think that there should be parameters set on that, such as those who are born between the horoscopes of Sagittarius to Capricorn, or Mondays, Wednesdays, and every second Sunday are completely tax exempt, or anyone whose name starts with a J, starts with an A, starts with an L, starts with an M. Or, you see where I'm going, like how ridiculous it is when you start adding parameters to tax exemption? Well, that's kind of what Justin Trudeau just did by giving tax relief to no GST for 2 months. It's super bizarre, and not a lot of people agree with it. Now, the only part that I agree with is that there is a cut to the tax, but again, that's like Justin Trudeau taking a gun, shooting you with it, and then giving you a Band-Aid and a shot of vodka to heal yourself. Yeah, the vodka might help, but also I need a bit of an ambulance. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. We're going to be taking a look at some questions that reporters had to Justin Trudeau while he was giving the speech about the tax. So be prepared for that. Then we're going to be taking a look at this weird controversy with the Brick and Leon's furniture here in Canada, how they're kind of being investigated. Then Pierre Poilievre has a little bit to say where he's extremely angry on a podcast with mainstream media. And we're going to take a look at Justin Trudeau's mistress kind of thing, Melanie Joly, Canada's self-appointed action figure who likes to go and wear World War II clothes to make it seem like she's really making the difference when she talks about the war. So she's over in Washington, D.C., and she talks about Canada-U.S. relations, among other things. And so we're going to look at that. And then we're going to wrap things up with some question period highlights that you likely haven't seen unless you stayed around to the very end of one of the previous question periods. Welcome back, everybody. Sit back, relax, and here is the news. And now we're going to take a look at some things that we didn't get a chance to look at before, which is Canada. Will Trudeau abide by ICC rulings after warrant issued for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu?
That the ICC has issued warrants for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, Canadian law enforcement is obligated to arrest them should they come to Canada. Will you allow that to happen, or will you step in to prevent an arrest?
First of all, as Canada has always said, it's really important that everyone abide by international law. This is something we've been calling on from the beginning of the conflict. We are one of the founding members of the International Criminal Court and International Court of Justice. We stand up for international law, and we will abide by all the regulations and rulings of the international courts. This is just who we are as Canadians. At the same time, we need to keep working to solve this terrible situation. We need to see aid flowing in to people who are facing famine and disease. We need to see all the hostages released. We need to see Hamas lay down its arms. We condemn Hamas for its continued actions. We need to see a ceasefire that protects civilians. We need to get back on track towards a two-state solution with a peaceful Israel living alongside a peaceful Palestinian state. These are the things that Canada has been working on. And at the same time, we have to recognize as Canadians that it's been very, very difficult for members of different communities in this country. We have to remember who we are, be there for each other, understand that people are angry and grieving, but remember that we are all pushing for peace and stability as hard as we can.
No, he's not. That doesn't make any sense. He's absolutely not pushing for peace and stability as hard as he can. He's a warmonger. He's allowing like these Hamas protests to happen here in Canada. He's actually encouraging it, guising it under freedom of speech, even though there's chance for death of other people here in Canada. And then you also gave $5 billion to Ukraine. I know that was specifically about Palestine, but you're funding one war, and then on another war, you're not funding it, but you're socially encouraging certain things to happen. The leadership is insane. Trudeau doesn't stand for anything. Trudeau has a weak spine, and he will cave to social pressure. As we're seeing, he's retreating on the entire pillars and values of what liberalism today stands for. Overly progressive immigration policies. He's now cut back on that and done a U-turn. Right now, he was like super pro-Israel and giving all the money to Israel and saying they should keep fighting, fight. And now it's the total opposite. And it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna arrest him if the Prime Minister of Israel shows up here. Like, he's just flip-flopping on everything, right? Socially malleable. But that's not how a Prime Minister should be. And this next clip here, Trudeau comments on the NDP and how they chose to sit back, cross their arms, and allow Parliament to be bogged down, says Justin Trudeau.
The NDP called for removing GST on home heating and other monthly bills. Why was that not included?
I'm pleased that the NDP is getting behind us on this tax break for all Canadians. We have seen, unfortunately, for the past months in the House of Commons, the Conservatives have been blocking legislation that could be passed on accelerating dental benefits for Canadians, on moving forward, on supports for families. And for the NDP to say, okay, enough is enough. Let's actually get Parliament working to deliver for Canadians. It's about time. We know the Conservatives didn't care about dental benefits or the school food policy. They voted against them, so they're fine blocking it in the House. But I know the NDP actually supports our national school food program. The NDP actually supports dental care. So it's been bewildering to me to see them sit back, cross their arms, and allow Parliament to be bogged down in procedural filibusters that the Conservatives are choosing to do and not being able to deliver concretely for Canadians. So to see the NDP getting behind us on a tax break for all Canadians, on support for Canadian families, on delivering money in the bank accounts and pockets of working Canadians, these are things that we should be pulling together as a Parliament, and I'm hoping all parliamentarians will get behind us on this.
Thank you. Last question.
But again, it's short-term relief. Yes, any relief is good relief, but it's for 2 months. It's insanity. Why not do it for even 2 years or 1 year? Why 2 months? Just for the holidays? That proves the point that you're clinically insane.
Hi, Prime Minister. Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. I think when people saw that this announcement was being made, they saw Jagmeet Singh sort of take credit for it preemptively last night. They thought maybe you'd struck a deal with the NDP to end the privilege debate with this announcement. It sounds like the NDP isn't prepared to do that, and they want to use other motions to support this measure. What kind of discussions are you having with that party to get Parliament moving again?
I am certainly hopeful that the NDP will see that a frozen Parliament doesn't deliver for Canadians. Like I said, the Conservatives have been blocking all the affordability measures that we've been putting forward, and to see the NDP tacitly agreeing with them has been a little confusing for a lot of progressives across the country. So with this measure that has to get through Parliament and get through Parliament quickly so people can start feeling that relief at that tax break as soon as mid-December comes around, the NDP is going to have to step up and get beyond the freeze that we're seeing in Parliament. But I hope all parliamentarians get behind these measures. These are measures that we can deliver because our fiscal situation is strong, but we need to deliver because Canadians certainly need this support.
Yeah, I think they need the support for more than a couple of months. I mean, that's kind of insane there. Right? Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments about that. Now we're going to take a look at what the heck is going on with the brick and with Leon's furniture. Like, this is just a wild story. Here we go. Now we're going to be taking a look at this extremely bizarre story where Leon's and the brick, that's right, the furniture stores, are being investigated by Canada's Competition Bureau. Kind of weird, but here we go.
And two furniture giants many Canadians are familiar with, Leon's and its subsidiary, The Brick, are at the center of an investigation by the Competition Bureau looking into whether they deceptively marketed their products to customers. Paul Hollingsworth on exactly what the watchdog is examining.
Leon's owns The Brick. Both stores specialize in furniture and appliances, and both chains are facing serious allegations from Canada's Competition Bureau. They include end dates for sales and promotions that are false or misleading, inflated regular prices when making savings claims, and sale claims with no reference to the amount of the discount. In a joint statement, Leon's and The Brick said they are committed to complying with all regulatory requirements and are cooperating with the Bureau. So far, there is no final conclusion that any wrongdoing has been committed. If found guilty, the punishment could be severe.
Companies have been fined in the millions of dollars previously for these exact kinds of offenses.
Anyone who has any suspicions or concerns about alleged deceptive marketing practices is asked to contact the Competition Bureau. It's unknown what prompted this investigation. Marketing analyst Clive Veroni says these allegations could be a turnoff and a breach of trust for customers.
We are heading into a major sales period. We're heading into Black Friday, and right after that will be Christmas sales. This is a critical sales period for the company.
Canada's Competition Bureau has not offered any timeline for how long this investigation could take. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
Yikes. Not a good look. Not a good look all around for Canada. It seems like in the government side of things, there seems to be a lot of shady things happening, and in the private sector. Yay, go Canada, right? I'm sure that's awesome for our reputation. Now we're going to take a look at this interview with Pierre Poilievre sitting down, doing like a podcast for mainstream media, because he's extremely upset and he's bringing a lot of valid points to the table. Here we go.
This is the question I have for people. Trudeau and the NDP Liberals have increased government spending by 85% in a decade. Are you getting 85% better federal government services?
Yeah, that's a question that I think people can answer.
But just because something costs more
doesn't mean
that it's better.
Yeah.
You know, it's like saying, well, I went to the best restaurant in the Lower Mainland yesterday. Oh yeah, what was so great about it? Well, they charged me $1,000. It must be good because it was really expensive. Well, what about the ambiance? It was terrible. What about the food? It was awful. The service? Oh, we waited for hours, but it must be the best because we spent the most on it. That's the government mentality. We're judging success by how expensive things could be. Government should be cheaper than ever. With new technology, we should be able to deliver more and better services at a lower cost. But if you look at all the things government does, they're becoming more and more expensive to deliver worse and worse results. Look at housing. Trudeau spent $80 billion on affordable housing. And what's the result? Housing costs have actually doubled. You know, so just because the government is spending billions of dollars on a problem doesn't mean that it's going to get any better. In fact, the more government gets involved in our lives, the worse our lives become. We need less government and more freedom.
Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments about that. I just don't understand how anyone can really disagree with Pierre Poilievre about this. It just doesn't make any sense. Now we're going to take a look at what Trudeau's mistress, aka Melanie Joly, has to say when she's in Washington, D.C., talking about just Canadian news, Canadian politics, and the relationship between Canada and America, because it's not good. It's not good. And every time she talks and does press conferences, I just get the vibe that she knows the end is near for her job. She knows it's coming to an end. Here we go.
Minister, did you get a sense of whether Donald Trump's planned, 10 to 20% tariffs across the board, whether that's going to apply to Canada or whether we're actually going to get the exemption that we're apparently pushing for?
So, we know we have a good trading relationship with the U.S. President-elect Trump announced yesterday his new ambassador, his appointment to become ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra. When he announced that, he also mentioned the strength of the USMCA, which he was able to agree on, along with, of course, Prime Minister Trudeau. And so our goal is to make sure that we continue to abide by this important trade deal we have with the U.S. And meanwhile, many senators I've met are clear that when it comes to Canada, the relationship on trade is very, very important. And also they notice what we're doing to make sure that we protect also our market based on national security grounds on any form of backdoor that China could have. And so based on that, I think that we're having positive conversations, but we'll continue to engage.
The U.S. says that they don't like the ICC's decision that Benjamin Netanyahu should be arrested. Do you agree with the U.S. or do you agree with the ICC that this is a good decision to put out a warrant?
So I'll let the U.S. take its own decisions. When it comes to us, the Prime Minister was asked that question earlier today. So I think that we should all remind ourselves that the situation in Gaza is absolutely catastrophic. Too many women and children have been killed, and at the same time, hostages need to be released, and Weinstein's remains need to be returned to her family and to her daughter, Iris, which I'm in close contact with. And that's why we need a ceasefire. And that's been Canada's position for a long, long time. Now,
How is your position calling for a ceasefire on one war, but you're actively promoting and instigating another war? Why not call a ceasefire in Ukraine as well? Like, I don't understand the hypocrisy. These people are delusional. They are warmongers. I'm not pro any other country. I'm not pro Israel. I'm not pro Russia, Ukraine, Palestine. I'm not pro any of these people. I'm pro Canada. And Canada is at a real risk of losing out on a lot of money with trade deals. We're at a real risk of facing some sort of nuclear war. I have no idea. But I don't want wars around the world. This is a lose-lose situation for everybody involved. And Canada has been indirectly involved. We got troops in Poland. We've sent over $5 billion to Ukraine, right? I know it's not free money. It's guised under, it's not grants. It's loans. We've loaned them $5 billion with interest. They're a war-torn country. Are they ever going to be able to pay back the loan? You can avoid not paying back a loan by declaring bankruptcy. Are you kidding me? Ukraine owes freaking $100 million plus interest back to America. Why is Canada going to be a priority in getting any of that money back? This doesn't make any sense.
The founding member of the ICC. Canada has always believed not only that international law is important, but international law needs to apply to all parties at all times. And at the same time, in order to do so, we need accountability in our world. And so based on that, Canada will abide by its obligation under the ICC treaty.
Just one question about the border. You mentioned having discussed it with people here in Washington. The Trump administration is planning, or the future administration is planning, what it calls a shock and awe campaign at the border on day one of its administration. How confident are you, after having spoken with people here, that those measures it takes might not affect travel at the northern border as well?
Listen, when it comes to the border, first and foremost, it is in the interest of both countries to make sure that it is secure. It is our fundamental duty to make sure that that's the case. And so we are continuing a conversation. The Minister of Public Safety, Dominic LeBlanc, is really active on this. The Minister of Immigration, Mark Miller, as well. And we are managing through the U.S.-Canada Committee also a lot of these discussions. But we have to make sure that we engage with the U.S., and that's exactly why I'm here. That's exactly also why I'm heading to Halifax to meet with 5 more senators, which are important decision makers. Some of them come from northern states. Some of them really understand the importance of having a border that is secure on both sides, and others that may have a different geography coming from a different part of the country also absolutely get how much Canada must be, and Canada and the U.S. must be in close coordination on this issue.
Okay, a question on the ICC, just following up on what Adrian asked earlier. I just want to make sure I've understood correctly. If Mr. Netanyahu or Mr. Dave set foot on Canadian soil, they would be arrested.
So what I've said is we will abide by our treaty obligations because we believe in international accountability. We believe in the ICC. Now, I won't give an hypothetical answer based on a hypothetical question, but my point is Canada, founding member, has signed the treaty and therefore needs to follow its obligations.
Another question now on to Trump administration. How would Canada respond if Trump moves forward with his plan to impose a universal up to 20% tariff on all countries, including Canada?
I've answered that question already regarding tariffs. I think your colleague asked me, it was a 10% tariff that he mentioned. You're mentioning now 20%. What I'm saying to you is that our trade relationship is important. I think all the different senators I've talked to know that. President-elect Trump referred to the importance of the trade relationship when presenting what would be his appointment for the future ambassador of Canada. And so we'll continue to work on it. We have to do our job, which is to meet important people, to develop the new relationship with the new administration, and being the diplomat-in-chief of the government, that's something that I take extremely seriously. Anything else, guys?
Yeah, sure. Who have you managed to speak with in the Trump transition team so far?
So I won't give all the different names of the people that I'm in contact with, but what I can tell you is right now we've had many conversations with different senators. Here I met with Rick Scott. I met also with Lindsey Graham. I will be meeting also with Lisa Murkowski a bit later today. I will be meeting with Jim Rich, which is also a senator in Halifax and the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Senate. So I'm just giving you enough names right now.
Any response to Russia apparently firing a ballistic missile into Ukraine, and seems like an escalation in their tactics?
So I know there's been a lot of rhetoric on the part of President Putin. We know that President Putin has no red lines, and the best way to get to peace is for him to leave Ukraine.
Liberals are trying to hide from Canadians that the company owned by the disgraced Liberal from Edmonton Centre is still eligible to get government contracts. Now, the Prime Minister may believe that his former and failed employment minister is the victim, but the real victims, of course, are Indigenous people and the people defrauded by his company. So to this point, the Prime Minister has failed to ban global health imports from bidding on contracts with the Government of Canada. Will he stand up and ban them today?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have been very clear in this House that that company was not on the list, and Indigenous procurement is for Indigenous people. But, Mr. Speaker, this is an attempt by the Conservative members of Parliament to distract from what is really good news for Canadians today. And the fact that we are going to give a break on GST for essential goods over the coming months, and we are going to support 18.6 million Canadians with a Canada Working benefit. Mr. Speaker, the question remains, will the Leader of the Opposition allow Conservative MPs to vote for it? Exactement.
For 2 months, we get help.
So let's get this straight. The disgraced former minister, the member for Edmonton Centre, a Liberal, started a pandemic profiteering business, and that business lied about being Indigenous to get government contracts. They're under investigation by the Edmonton Police Service for fraud. And this Liberal government is still allowing them to bid on government contracts. Now, they're saying they're not on the list for approved Indigenous-owned businesses. But what about for any other type of contract? Why is this Prime Minister determined to protect Liberal insiders, and why won't he ban his disgraced former minister from having these contracts?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I said, that company is not on the list for Indigenous procurement. But yet again, Mr. Speaker, what we see from the Conservatives opposite is they don't want to talk about the important affordability measures that we have presented today. They don't want to talk about the fact that they are going to vote against and oppose a GST break for millions of Canadians when it comes to essential goods. They don't want to talk about the fact that they are going to oppose a $250 benefit for working Canadians, Mr. Speaker. They're just not there for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Mr. Speaker, this government says that they support women's equality and reconciliation, but their actions show anything but. This Prime Minister was very quick to fire the first female Indigenous Minister of Justice because she wasn't willing to lie for him. Yet it took him weeks to fire a Minister of Employment, a white male, who faked his Indigenous identity.
Wow.
It's so easy to fire one, but not the other.
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, what's so encouraging, and I would say it's not often that I find something encouraging from the Conservative Party, but what is encouraging to hear is their staunch support for Indigenous procurement. And I agree with the Conservative Party. We have to work hard to make sure that Indigenous businesses are the ones that actually profit from Indigenous priorities. And so I want to thank the Conservative Party for keeping their eye on making sure that this country ensures Indigenous economic success. We'll do that together.
The Honourable Minister, the Honourable Member from Calgary.
Yay!
To err is human. The Honourable Minister from...
You did it again!
Colleagues, the Honourable Member from Calgary-Midnapore.
Mr. Speaker, this is not real reconciliation. It took weeks for this Prime Minister to fire the Minister of Employment, to allow him to resign. Real reconciliation, according to the former Minister of Justice, would have been to fire that Minister of Employment immediately. She says she's left to watch white people play Ancestry Wheel of Fortune. She says it's shameful and it's destructive. So why did it take the Prime Minister so long to fire the Minister of Employment when it was so easy to fire a real female Indigenous minister?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous...
Great, Mr. Speaker, to see so many questions on Indigenous priorities in this House, and I want to thank the member opposite and hope that she will work with her party to ensure the safe passage of Bill C-61, a Clean Drinking Water Act for First Nations that's been co-developed with First Nations in this country. Mr. Speaker, there are many opportunities that the party opposite can support Indigenous priorities, and that's certainly one of them.
The Honourable Member from Battle River, Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the disgraced Liberal MP from Edmonton Centre resigned from Cabinet, but as of today, his shady company GHI is still eligible to bid on government contracts, despite the member admitting that he lied about his heritage to get dollars earmarked for Indigenous businesses in the past. That's on top of being embroiled in conflicts of interest and even allegations of being connected with international drug busts. The government House Leader still has not made clear whether or not that company has been banned from bidding on contracts with the government. Can she give a straight answer here today?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is clear is that the company in question was not listed as an Indigenous company. What is clear is that the company never received a contract as an Indigenous company. And Mr. Speaker, we have taken many steps going forward to provide for modernization of procurement and transparency and openness, and we're working towards supporting Canadians and supporting the Indigenous community who require our support, and we'll be there for them all the way through. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Sturgeon River, Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, what do 5 Range Rovers, 2 Porsche Cayennes, a post office box co-owned by a suspected drug trafficker, a warehouse full of medical supplies destroyed by arson, millions of dollars in fraud, and a company falsely claiming to be Indigenous all have in common? The Liberal member for Edmonton Centre. The Prime Minister continues to stand by his MP. He sees nothing wrong with these scandals. It begs the question, if all this corruption and scandal isn't enough to fire a minister, how corrupt do you need to be to get fired by this Prime Minister?
Oh, mon Dieu. Tout fini.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, that question has been answered.
one question that I have is how far the Conservatives are going to go. Conservative leader wants to take away $10 a day childcare from Canadian mothers. He wants to take away dental care subsidies from our seniors. He wants to take away 750,000 new construction bills from Canadians who want to buy their first home, Mr. Speaker. Now the newest policy of the Conservative leader is to take away the tax break that the Liberal government announced today for all Canadians. When is it going to end, Mr. Speaker? Under this Conservative leader, he's going to make life more expensive.
The honourable member from Sturgeon River, Parkland.
Well, Mr. Speaker, now that the Prime Minister's minister in charge of Jasper's recovery has resigned under a cloud of suspicion, who's going to oversee the rebuilding of this beautiful community? Will it be the radical environment minister who ignored warnings for years from forestry experts that the dead forest around Jasper was a powder keg waiting to blow? Will the Prime Minister assure Canadians that he won't put the radical minister who failed the community by allowing it to burn in the first place in charge of Jasper and towns like it again?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
This member should be ashamed of the previous
Bro, shut up. Go climb the CN Tower.
Mr. Speaker,
Go protest.
how much they invested in 2011 for fire protection in Jasper? Zero. Do you know how much they invested in 2012? Zero. Do you know how much they invested in 2013? Zero. 2014? Zero. 2015? Zero. We've invested more than $60 million in fire prevention in Jasper. They did absolutely nothing.
Dude, that national park burned down because you're incompetent. You've been warned about it for a very long time. Watch for gang signs. He's going to throw one up. He's going to throw up a gang sign.
Order!
Stephen Guilbeault ignored the Alberta government, man.